At the break of dawn in Maplewood Park, the golden light of sunrise streamed through the tall, leafy trees, gently illuminating the paved jogging trail winding through the peaceful, upscale Maplewood Gardens neighborhood. The air was crisp, carrying a refreshing hint of dew and the sweet songs of the morning birds. For Serena Rivers, these early hours were sacred, a time when the world was still quiet enough for her mind to wander freely. Dressed in a form-fitting charcoal workout ensemble, Serena's confident stride and measured breathing reflected both purpose and calm. Serena not only cherished these tranquil moments of solitude on her daily runs, but she also carried the weight of a formidable responsibility. At 38 years old, Serena had ascended to one of the highest echelons of law enforcement as the head of internal affairs for the state constabulary. Her career was defined by an unwavering commitment to fairness and justice. Each morning before the hustle of bureaucratic battles, she used these runs as an opportunity to mentally prepare for the challenges ahead, a challenge that frequently pitted her against deeply rooted corruption and misconduct within her own ranks. After years of proving herself in an environment where integrity was often compromised, Serena had earned accolades not just for her professional successes but for her fearless determination to hold even her fellow officers accountable. It was this very dedication that led her to choose Maplewood Gardens as her home, a quiet, affluent enclave where she could momentarily escape the relentless pressures of her job and recharge in solitude. Here, amid whispering leaves and the soft hum of the early morning, her thoughts often drifted to the reforms she was so passionate about. With each measured step on the trail, she envisioned a future where justice and dignity would prevail, even in the most challenging of circumstances. On this particular morning, as she jogged with the rhythmic cadence of her footsteps, a familiar podcast on police reform murmured through her wireless earbuds, fueling her resolve and filling her with fresh ideas. Yet, despite the peaceful ambience and her personal reflections, an undercurrent of anticipation stirred within her, a subtle reminder that even in these serene settings, duty never slept for someone in her position. Serena's mind wandered momentarily to the long nights spent poring over case files and drafting detailed internal reports. The sacrifices and solitary moments had all led her here, to a juncture where each run was a reaffirmation of her purpose. In the pale luminescence of early light, her heart beat steady and sure. She appreciated the beauty of the moment, the interplay of nature and urban life, and found solace in the sense of freedom that running provided. As the morning fully broke into day, Serena's quiet determination shone through. In a world where every action held weight and every decision rippled into the communities she served, her early hour runs symbolized the purity of intent that she brought to a demanding career. With her mind focused on both the serenity before her and the battles ahead, Serena Rivers ran on, a beacon of perseverance amid the delicate balance between public service and personal peace. While Serena Rivers maintained her steady pace along the scenic trail of Maplewood Park, an unexpected interruption began to unravel the calm of her morning routine. In a sleek, dark patrol cruiser that crawled along the edge of the path, Officer Marcus Hale fixed his gaze on her with an intensity that belied the tranquility of the environment. Marcus, whose background had been steeped in traditional, and often prejudiced, notions of authority, could not reconcile the image before him, a poised, determined black woman jogging with an air of quiet confidence. In a predominantly white neighborhood like Maplewood Gardens, raised on strict ideas about who belonged where, Officer Hale's thoughts were clouded by an unwarranted suspicion. He perceived Serena's presence as incongruous, as if her determination might conceal ulterior motives. With little regard for the principles of fairness he was sworn to uphold, Marcus activated his patrol lights and maneuvered his cruiser to intercept her path. The sudden burst of flashing red and blue lights shattered the early morning calm. Serena, ever alert, slowed her pace upon noticing the disruption as her earbuds fell silent. Her finely tuned senses immediately registered a discomfort that was not part of her expected routine. Marcus approached the scene with a hardened expression, his demeanor rigid and overtly authoritarian. His mind, preoccupied with long-held stereotypes instilled by years of misguided traditions, instantly branded Serena as a possible threat. "Hey!" he barked, voice harsh and uncompromising, as he motioned toward her with an air of entitlement. Startled, yet composed, Serena stopped in her tracks. Her eyes met his, an unspoken challenge shimmering in their depths, an acknowledgement of a world that had forced her to fight not only external injustice but also the prejudiced views of those entrusted with its protection. Responding with measured calm, Serena explained that she was merely engaged in her morning jog, an activity she had performed countless times in her neighborhood. Her explanation, however, fell on deaf ears. Marcus's suspicion only grew as he recalled a fabricated report that had somehow found its way to his desk. In his eyes, every gesture and every movement was now loaded with hidden intent. Without presenting any concrete evidence, he began listing accusations that painted Serena as a trespasser involved in petty theft, suggesting that her very presence was an anomaly in the orderly quiet of Maplewood Gardens. The atmosphere became charged, with the sharp contrast between Serena's dignified composure and Marcus's aggressive posture drawing the attention of a few early-rising onlookers. In the space between the soft lapping of her steady breaths and the rapid thumping of his pulse, the morning had transformed into a dramatic confrontation of conflicting worlds. Serena's voice remained soft yet resolute as she insisted on her innocence, calmly reiterating that her only intention was to maintain her routine. Officer Marcus Hale, however, found no room for reason in his skewed perspective. Every word Serena spoke only seemed to affirm his misguided belief that she was hiding something. His actions, motivated by a prejudice he could neither acknowledge nor control, turned an ordinary morning run into an ordeal that laid the groundwork for a chain of events that would soon expose the deep fissures within the law enforcement system. Even as the tension mounted, Serena's inner resolve only deepened. Every second of that unwarranted encounter was a reminder of the challenges she faced, not just in her professional role but also in her personal journey to uphold fairness amidst bias. The early morning light witnessed the start of yet another test of her courage and unwavering commitment to justice. The confrontation between Serena Rivers and Officer Marcus Hale swiftly escalated from a simple stop into a charged encounter that would unravel the latent tensions beneath the surface of Maplewood Gardens. As Marcus pressed forward, his voice raised in disapproval, Serena remained stoically poised. When he demanded explanations with an edge of derision, her response was measured and dignified, a testament to her steadfast spirit in the face of unfounded accusations. Standing before him on the quiet jogging path, Serena reiterated that she was simply out for her customary run. However, her reassurances were met not with understanding but with further hostility. Marcus's eyes darted over her athletic attire and the modest water bottle strapped to her side, a detail he seized upon to bolster his baseless claim that something was awry. Every gesture he made, every word he uttered, was driven by a preconception that saw her presence as an intrusion rather than a legitimate assertion of her right to be there. As the exchange continued, a palpable discomfort began to radiate from both parties. Serena's calm, steady tone contrasted sharply with Marcus's increasingly aggressive body language. The officer's suspicion morphed into something more volatile as he questioned, "Do you even understand where you are?" His words carried the weight of a long-held bias, echoing the misguided lessons from a past he never questioned. In that moment, each bystander who had started to gather sensed that this was more than a routine stop. It was a clash of values and a test of the principles that both Serena and her profession held dear. Serena's eyes, however, never wavered. With quiet authority, she countered his unwarranted claims by stating, "I live nearby, and my presence here is as natural as the sunrise." Her words were a gentle reminder that the right to inhabit public space should never be subject to undue scrutiny based on appearance or assumptions. Yet, Marcus, blinded by prejudice, could not accept her explanation. Instead, he doubled down on his accusations, his tone now bordering on condescension. It was as if he believed that by loudly proclaiming his authority, he could somehow rewrite the truth that Serena so clearly embodied. The tension on the jogging path grew thicker with each passing second. A small crowd began to form at a respectful distance, their smartphones recording every moment as a silent testament to what was unfolding before them. The onlookers, residents accustomed to the serenity of Maplewood Gardens, watched in disbelief as the situation escalated from a routine morning run to a public spectacle of confrontation. Serena's mind raced as she recognized the dangerous implications of unchecked authority. Her inner resolve hardened, and despite the rising pressure, she maintained her composure. She knew that any reaction born of anger or frustration would only play into Marcus's hands. Instead, she chose her words with care, each sentence imbued with quiet strength. "Officer Hale, I assure you, I am here in complete lawfulness," she said, her voice low and unwavering, "and I expect to be treated with the respect that every citizen deserves." Yet, even as she spoke, Marcus's demeanor grew more erratic. The air around them seemed to vibrate with the intensity of two opposing forces, one rooted in the enduring pursuit of justice, and the other in a stubborn, archaic need to control. With the early sun casting long shadows over the path, the stage was set for a conflict that was destined to reveal not only the deep-seated issues within the system but also the resilience of a woman who had spent her life fighting for truth and fairness. In that charged moment on the trail, Serena Rivers stood as a quiet force of determination, a symbol of dignity in the face of unwarranted aggression. Her measured reply and unbreakable calm were the first sparks in a confrontation that would soon escalate far beyond the confines of that morning, into a defining moment that would expose the fractures within authority itself. As the tension on Maplewood Park's jogging path reached its boiling point, the situation began to spiral into a public spectacle that drew the attention of an increasing number of onlookers. The soft morning light had yielded to a more assertive daybreak, yet the neighborhood's usual calm was shattered by the charged encounter unfolding between Serena Rivers and Officer Marcus Hale. Marcus, visibly agitated and entrenched in his misguided mission to impose authority, had grown impatient with Serena's repeated assertions of her innocence. The small gathering of residents steadily evolved into an impromptu audience, their smartphones capturing every tense moment as digital witnesses to what many felt was an obvious abuse of power. Whispers rippled through the crowd, voices of concern mixing with indignation. Even as Serena maintained a resolute calm, the aggression from Officer Hale escalated. With his back turned slightly toward the growing crowd, Marcus's frustration manifested physically. His hand darted toward the cuffs at his side, and an emotion fueled as much by panic as by prejudice, he snapped them onto Serena's wrist. The metallic click resounded louder than any of the murmurs from the crowd. Despite the sudden physical constraint, Serena's eyes did not betray a hint of fear. Instead, they shone with a steely determination born from years of exposure to injustice, each glance a silent challenge to the authority he claimed. "What is your problem?" a bystander shouted, her voice trembling between anger and sorrow. Another onlooker, a middle-aged man with a camera firmly in hand, insisted, "This isn't right. Let her go." Yet, as the pressure of public scrutiny mounted, Marcus's response was one of curt commands and forceful gestures. His posture, designed to intimidate, only served to spotlight the clash of outdated ideology with modern expectations of transparency and fairness. In the brief moments that followed, the dynamic shifted dramatically. Serena, although her wrist was now restrained by the cold metal of the cuffs, took a step back with an air of dignified resilience. "Officer Hale," she said quietly but firmly, "I am in complete compliance with the law. But you must understand, this treatment is unacceptable." Her measured tone contrasted starkly with Marcus's rising impatience, which bordered on alarm as he began repeatedly insisting that she was resistant to arrest. Each word from Marcus seemed to amplify the discontent among the witnesses. One elderly resident, holding the leash of her small terrier, called out clearly, "She's done nothing wrong." Her voice, though soft, was filled with the conviction of a community that had long been ignored. Another individual, a young man whose phone was now recording every detail, shouted back in support, "We have every moment on video. You cannot just abuse your authority like this." The public display quickly became more than just an isolated incident, it was a confrontation captured in real time, unfolding against the backdrop of a neighborhood that prided itself on order and respect. Marcus's attempts to restore control by directing his stern commands at both Serena and the crowd seemed only to draw further ire. His movements, no longer smooth and confident but instead jittery under the weight of onlookers' judgment, betrayed his inner turmoil. As the onlookers continued to document the encounter, the very air around Maplewood Park grew tense with anticipation of what would happen next. The cruiser's interior lights flashed intermittently, a stark contrast to the steady, unwavering resolve on Serena's face. Even though she was being forced toward the patrol car, every step she took resonated with quiet indignation. "You're making a scene," Marcus snapped as he ushered her inside, but his tone lacked the commanding authority he expected to wield. Inside the cruiser, the confined space brought every emotion into sharper relief. Serena's calm presence provided an unspoken rebuke to Marcus's increasingly agitated state. The muffled sounds of the panicked crowd outside trickled in through the closed windows, each muffled cheer and gasp a reminder that this was no longer just a routine stop, it was a defining moment that could not be swept under the rug. Marcus's fingers fumbled with the radio as he called for backup, his voice now a shaky mixture of authority and uncertainty. "This is Officer Hale. I've detained a suspect, violent, resisting arrest," he announced in a tone intended to assert control, though it only deepened the sense of injustice among those listening. Outside, the murmurs from the crowd grew louder, a cacophony of voices united in disapproval. Throughout it all, Serena sat silently in the back of the cruiser, her expression calm and inscrutable. As the patrol car slowly drove away from the now tumultuous scene, every mile that passed was a heavy reminder that this confrontation was about much more than one officer's overreach. It was a testament to the urgent need for accountability, justice, and a transformation in the very practices of authority that many had long taken for granted. The interiors of the Maplewood Gardens precinct were a study in muted tension as Serena Rivers was escorted into the booking area by Officer Marcus Hale. The fluorescent lights flickered overhead, casting a cold glow on a scene that was anything but routine. As the cruiser's door opened with a metallic clank, a hush descended over the waiting area. Onlookers among the station staff exchanged uneasy glances. They had heard murmurs about the commotion outside, whispers that spoke of misconduct and mistaken identity. Serena's presence was immediately both an enigma and a challenge to the established order. Barely a moment had passed since the incident on the jogging path when Marcus's tone shifted from authoritative bluster to a hastily arranged formal procedure. "I'll need you to step over here," he demanded, ushering Serena towards a desk cluttered with forms and folders. His voice, once full of bluster in the open air, now wavered slightly in the sterile confines of the station. The camaraderie that might have existed between colleagues seemed overshadowed by an undercurrent of self-justification. Serena, her wrist still marked by the cool bite of metal cuffs, maintained her dignified composure. With measured steps, she approached the desk, glancing at the disinterested stares of fellow officers. Every detail of the surroundings, the persistent hum of the air conditioner, the faint scent of disinfectant, even the scatter of paperwork, served as a backdrop to the unfolding drama that had already taken on a life of its own outside. "Officer Hale," Serena began, her tone calm yet laced with restrained authority, "I have nothing to hide. I reside in this neighborhood, my presence here is entirely lawful. I'm not a suspect, merely a citizen exercising her rights." Her words, articulated with clarity and precision, were meant to assert not only her innocence but also her right to demand the respect owed to any law-abiding citizen. Marcus, flustered by the growing awareness of his own questionable actions, fumbled through his paperwork. In a brusque and rather clumsy manner, he began ticking boxes labeled trespassing and resisting arrest, as if the mere filing of forms could override the chaos of a situation that had spiraled far beyond protocol. "You did act out of line," he insisted, though his voice wavered under the weight of the silent judgment of his peers. The atmosphere was thick with tension. It was as if the very walls of the booking area absorbed the accusatory energy. The sound of hushed conversations from a nearby counter filtered into the room. Some officers exchanged sympathetic looks with Serena, while others, perhaps too steeped in tradition, remained stoic and silent. One could almost sense that an unspoken verdict was forming among those present, a collective dissatisfaction with the manner in which authority was being wielded that morning. As Marcus attempted to finalize the unnecessary accusations, Serena's eyes scanned the room, taking in every detail with practiced composure. Her gaze briefly met that of a colleague who appeared to question the officer's narrative. It was a fleeting moment, a silent acknowledgement that the truth was beginning to pierce through the veneer of an overly rigid system. "I have nothing to confess, Officer Hale," Serena said with calm determination, "only a desire for fair treatment." A moment later, the sound of a telephone ringing echoed through the station, a reminder of the ceaseless bureaucracy that governed every action. Marcus's hands trembled slightly as he reached for the receiver to make his next call. His words, directed over the line, attempted to cast the situation in a light that was far removed from the public outcry growing outside the precinct's windows. "Yes, dispatch, I'm handling an incident, a case of resisting arrest and trespassing," he reported with a rigidity that clashed with the obvious inconsistencies in his own story. In that sterile booking area, time seemed to slow. Every passing second was laden with the unspoken realization that Serena Rivers's case was not just another misadventure in the annals of routine stops, it was emblematic of a larger problem festering within the department. The tension was almost palpable, a physical manifestation of frustration and disillusionment shared by those who believed in true justice. Serena waited patiently as Marcus shuffled through records and attempted to complete the necessary forms. Despite the absurdity of the situation, she maintained her quiet fortitude, fully aware that the evidence of what had transpired on the jogging path was already circulating online, igniting debates about accountability and the abuse of power. In the sterile light of the station, every detail, the rustle of paper, the low murmur of voices, served as a poignant reminder of the challenges that lay ahead. This was no ordinary booking. It was a reckoning that would soon force the hidden truths behind every misplaced act of authority into the glaring light of day. The atmosphere within the Maplewood Gardens station grew even more charged when the heavy doors swung open and Captain Fiona Albright strode into the booking area. With sharp eyes and an unwavering demeanor, Captain Albright had long been known for her no-nonsense approach to justice. The room fell silent as her presence seemed to absorb every stray whisper and anxious glance. It wasn't long before it became evident that what had started as a routine, albeit contentious, encounter with Serena Rivers was on the verge of becoming something far more consequential. Captain Albright's authoritative steps carried her directly to the front desk, where Officer Marcus Hale was still clumsily fumbling with the paperwork he'd so hastily prepared. Without a moment's hesitation, she laid a tablet and a printed set of documents on the counter in front of him. The tablet screen displayed a live-streamed video, its details unmistakable. Serena's arrest had been captured from start to finish by onlookers, and the evidence was clear. The video showed not only the aggressive approach but also the steadily building community outrage outside the station's windows. "Officer Hale," Captain Albright's voice rang out, crisp and uncompromising, "explain to me exactly what happened here." There was no room for half-measures or feeble excuses in her tone. Her eyes bored into Marcus with a mix of disappointment and steely resolve. The assembled officers exchanged nervous glances as the gravity of the situation set in. Even those typically unyielding in their deference to protocol seemed unsettled under the captain's unwavering scrutiny. Marcus tried to muster a response, his voice faltering as he stuttered, "Captain. I was just following procedure." His words, however, withered instantly under the weight of the incriminating footage. Captain Albright's gaze remained fixed on him, her eyes reflecting both disappointment and a clear determination to restore integrity. "Following procedure, or fabricating one," she countered, her tone icy and precise. "This video clearly documents an excessive use of force and a gross abuse of power." Serena, who had been silently enduring the entire ordeal while seated in the holding area, looked up. Her expression remained calm, almost serene, as if to underscore the truth of her words without any need for further explanation. Captain Albright continued, now addressing Serena directly, "Ms. Rivers, you have every right to be here. I want you to know that I take such matters very seriously. The evidence on this tablet leaves no doubt that you were treated unfairly." Her words, measured and deliberate, carried the weight of justice long withheld. The captain then turned her attention back to Officer Hale, her voice softening only minutely as it took on the unmistakable timbre of finality. "I have ordered an immediate review of Officer Hale's conduct. I want every report, every complaint, and every recording related to his stops to be examined. This incident reflects not on you, Ms. Rivers, but on an officer who has repeatedly shown that his actions are out of step with the values we strive to uphold." The room remained silent as Marcus's face flushed a deep crimson, his earlier arrogance now replaced with palpable remorse. The subsequent minutes stretched into a tense silence punctuated only by the soft clack of keyboard keys as other officers began pulling up records and typing into computers. Captain Albright meticulously detailed every instance of misconduct that the footage revealed, carefully listing discrepancies between Marcus's report and the undeniable video evidence. It was a damning catalog, a testament to a pattern of behavior that had gone unchecked for far too long. "You have not only violated Ms. Rivers's rights, but you have undermined the trust this department is meant to build with the community," Captain Albright declared, her voice rising with righteous indignation. "This is a betrayal of everything we stand for. I am suspending you, Officer Hale, effective immediately, pending a full investigation. Your badge, which you once wore as a symbol of honor, now represents a failure to protect the very principles of justice." Marcus's protests were feeble, an incoherent jumble of excuses that did nothing to divert the inevitable. Captain Albright's words were decisive and final. "Let this be a lesson to everyone in this department," she added, her tone brooking no argument. "Accountability is not optional. Every single individual in this institution must understand that the misuse of power will be met with swift and uncompromising consequences." As the captain finished her stern pronouncement, the atmosphere in the booking area shifted dramatically. What had begun as a chaotic disturbance was now transforming into a watershed moment for the department, a clear signal that change was not only necessary but already underway. Serena, seated quietly as ever, offered a slight nod of gratitude. The broadcast footage and Captain Albright's ensuing directives promised that the day's events would not be buried or forgotten, but instead would serve as a catalyst for systemic reform. In that moment, as the digital evidence continued to circulate beyond the precinct's walls, the embodiment of accountability, Captain Fiona Albright, ensured that justice would prevail. The unsparing scrutiny of one officer's misconduct had become the rallying cry for an entire department determined to reclaim its honor and restore its service to the community. In the wake of the explosive revelations from the Maplewood Gardens incident, the repercussions began to ripple far beyond the precinct's walls. The internal investigation, spearheaded by Captain Fiona Albright, evolved rapidly into a far-reaching inquiry that shook the very foundations of the department. The live-streamed footage of Serena Rivers's arrest had become a viral symbol of police overreach, and public outcry demanded swift and tangible reforms. As the evidence piled up, so too did the list of past grievances against Officer Marcus Hale. Whispers in the hallways transformed into formal complaints and written accounts. Every stop he had conducted in the past few years was now re-examined with a microscope of accountability. The investigation revealed a disturbing pattern: repeated stops of minority citizens for trivial or fabricated reasons, a disproportionately aggressive use of force, and blatant disregard for the principles of impartial justice. The scale of the misconduct was staggering, and it was too glaring to ignore. Captain Albright, with her steely determination and unwavering commitment to transparency, took full charge of the review process. She ordered a comprehensive audit of Marcus Hale's entire record. Every report, every citation, and every complaint filed against him was methodically compiled and scrutinized. The review process, bolstered by the overwhelming evidence from social media and citizen recordings, soon painted an unmistakable picture of systemic abuse. The once smug Officer Hale now faced incontrovertible proof of his repeated violations, a pattern of behavior that not only tarnished his reputation but also cast a long shadow over the department's integrity. Simultaneously, the impact of the incident reached well beyond the confines of law enforcement. News outlets across the country picked up the story, and headlines such as "Racial Profile Gone Wrong" and "Arrest of the Head of Internal Affairs Exposes Corruption" dominated broadcast cycles and social media feeds alike. Advocacy groups, community leaders, and even high-ranking officials in government began calling for sweeping changes. In numerous public forums and town hall meetings held in Maplewood Gardens and surrounding neighborhoods, citizens demanded reform. The incident was not seen simply as an isolated episode of misconduct, but rather as a manifestation of deep-rooted systemic issues that demanded urgent remediation. Throughout this period, Serena Rivers became a focal point, a symbol of resilience in the face of injustice. What had begun as an unprovoked interruption of her morning run had morphed into a clarion call for accountability and reform. Invited to speak at community gatherings and even national panels on police reform, Serena's insights and measured calm in the face of blatant prejudice resonated deeply with diverse audiences. Her testimony helped bridge the gap between communities and law enforcement, spurring discussions on re-education and the urgent need to overhaul policies that allowed for unchecked power. Meanwhile, within the department, Officer Marcus Hale's situation deteriorated rapidly. The comprehensive review of his file, disseminated among higher authorities, left little doubt about the depth of his misconduct. His arrest for misconduct became a cautionary tale, a stark reminder that every action by an officer was subject to scrutiny. Marcus found himself isolated, his once robust support network within the force having evaporated in the wake of his repeated transgressions. Captain Albright, never one to mince words, made it abundantly clear that this was the beginning of a much-needed cultural shift within the institution. "Our commitment is to protect and serve, not to oppress and alienate," she stated in a series of interviews. Her dedication to systemic reform extended to initiating new training programs focused on accountability, cultural competence, and community engagement. The department, once mired in a legacy of bias and aggression, was now forced to confront its own shortcomings head-on. As the investigation progressed, discipline and structural reforms were rapidly implemented. Several other officers with dubious records faced disciplinary action or reassignment. Internal memos circulated that emphasized the zero-tolerance policy for any violation of citizens' rights. The repercussions for Marcus Hale were symbolic, a poignant reminder that misconduct would no longer be swept aside. The public, galvanized by the events of that fateful morning, continued to voice their demands for lasting change. Social media campaigns, petitions, and community meetings all underscored the consensus: accountability was not optional, and justice would be the guiding principle moving forward. The story of Serena Rivers, captured so vividly in a short, poignant moment on Maplewood Park's trail, had grown into a nationwide movement that challenged entrenched norms and redefined the very nature of authority in service to the public. In the months that followed, the reforms initiated by Captain Fiona Albright and supported by the community began to bear fruit. The renewed focus on integrity, transparency, and collaboration marked the start of a transformation that promised to reshape the department, and, by extension, the community's trust in law enforcement, forever. In the final act of a saga that had captivated a nation and reshaped a long-standing institution, the resolution of the Maplewood Gardens affair culminated in a celebration of transformative justice and renewed commitment. Serena Rivers, whose dignified stance throughout the ordeal had made her a symbol of resilience and integrity, stood on a grand stage at a nationally recognized awards ceremony. The venue, buzzing with anticipation, was filled with community leaders, activists, and dignitaries, all gathered to honor those who had catalyzed change in the realm of law enforcement. Under the bright stage lights, Serena's presence exuded quiet strength. Dressed in an elegant yet understated ensemble, she accepted the prestigious award for her contributions to police reform and accountability. The applause that followed was not just for her individual achievements, it was an ovation for the broader movement that had been set in motion by her unwavering commitment to justice. As she walked to the podium, her gaze met those of inspired supporters and even a few former adversaries who now recognized the necessity of change. Captain Fiona Albright's reforms had ushered in an era of transparency and civic participation. The sweeping investigations into Officer Marcus Hale's misconduct had become the catalyst for a cascade of meaningful changes within the department. New training programs in cultural sensitivity and community policing replaced outdated methodologies, while accountability mechanisms were strengthened to ensure that every officer understood the responsibility of service. The once insular world of internal law enforcement had opened itself up to scrutiny and renewal. Serena's acceptance speech was both heartfelt and resolute. Justice is not achieved by punishment alone, but by creating a system where dignity and fairness prevail, she declared, her voice steady and clear. Her words resonated deeply with everyone in attendance, encapsulating the message that had emerged from the tumultuous events at Maplewood Park: change was not only necessary, it was inevitable. The award ceremony marked a turning point not only for Serena but for the entire community. The viral video that had sparked a nationwide conversation about police misconduct was now part of a larger narrative that celebrated accountability and reform. Social media buzzed with praise for the transformations implemented by Captain Albright and the collective outcry of a community that had long sought justice and respect. In that moment, as Serena shook hands with fellow reformers and leaders from across the country, it was evident that the pursuit of justice had evolved into a broader movement, one that prioritized empathy, transparency, and the sanctity of human dignity. The cheers, the heartfelt congratulations, and even the quiet, emotional nods shared among the crowd, all spoke to a commitment to building a future where incidents of abuse of power would be relics of a past era. As the event drew to a close, the legacy of that fateful morning on Maplewood Park and the enduring strength of Serena Rivers continued to echo beyond the walls of the auditorium. In the days that followed, community forums were held, policy reforms discussed, and a renewed sense of hope took root among citizens and officers alike. The collective journey toward a fairer and more accountable law enforcement system had only just begun, promising that the sacrifices made in the pursuit of truth would lead to lasting, positive transformation. Serena's story, now enshrined not only in the records of a department reformed but in the hearts of those who yearned for justice, stood as a timeless reminder: the fight for fairness and respect is a continuous endeavor, one that defines the very fabric of a just society.